Welcome to Desi Return Diaries, Embracing Home Again, the podcast that shares personal journeys and expert insights on returning to India. I'm your host, Avinash Pedi, here to guide and inspire you on your Desi return journey. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Desi Return. I am your host, Avinash. Today, I'm very excited to have Anish and Swathi on the podcast today to share their experience. Anish and Swathi lived in US for 9 years and returned to India. Welcome Anish and Swathi to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Avinash.
Cool. So maybe you can tell a little bit about your background and what motivated you to move back to India.
Okay. So both of us went to the US in 2014 for our masters, and that's where we both met. So we did our masters at NC State, and then following our masters, we went to Pennsylvania for our jobs, and both of us were working at the same company again. So we spent 6.5, 7 years in Pennsylvania, and then we moved back this November. So it has been 6 months so far.
Yesterday.
Yesterday it was the milestone for 6 months. That's about us.
Congratulations on the 6-month milestone. So what's the motivating factor, or what's the decision behind making this move after like 9 years in US?
So I would say there wasn't a single motivation factor, but there was several triggers that happened over the course of 9 years, 8.5 to be precise. The biggest factor is our personality. So I would say both of our personalities are better suited for the Indian culture. We gel well within the Indian culture. Our likes and dislikes are more inclined towards how this culture, how we were brought up, how this culture, how our culture works to be. And so over the course of 8.5 years, we had several triggers that made us think about moving back to India pretty seriously. Few of those triggers. So the first trigger was, I would say,
I think the immigration
rules
and the difficulty in just visiting India and then going back.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to plan ahead so much just to visit and see your family. I think that was a big factor.
Yeah, the second one was, again, as I mentioned, the personality. So we had a dense group of friends and close friends over there, but over a period of time they started relocating elsewhere. So a few of them came back to India, so they told us their success stories of coming back to India. And then the third one was a recent one. Was 2 years back we had a daughter, and that made us think pretty seriously about coming back. We wanted our daughter to grow up in the same environment as we did.
Okay, seems like there are some few motivation success stories from your friends that triggered, some thought process of relocating back to India.
Yeah.
And hopefully, your story can, motivate some other individuals too, right? In terms of the thought.
It already has started. I mean, when we came back to India, I wrote a Facebook post. I think I wrote 3 posts up till now. One was just the the post to
the process,
to help people. To help people what was the process we followed to come back to India. The second one was when we immediately landed a month after that, and then the third one was a 5-month or a 4-month check-in post.
Okay.
That we are surviving. We are happy.
That's great.
So
yeah.
A lot of people responded back very positively on those posts. A few of them called me. They wanted to know more on the details about the process. So good that it's helping out people.
That's great. So once you decided to move back, like how long you took for the process, like in terms of preparing to relocate, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you have encountered for the relocation?
So I think timeline-wise, March 2022 is when we made the decision of coming back, and November 2022 was when we actually relocated. So we had, what's that?
6 to
Seven
7 months.
months. Yeah. Yeah. So about, like, even if we had made the decision about 7 months back, we didn't really start preparing for the move
Yeah.
immediately after we made the decision. So I think that's one thing that we should have done sooner, because by the end, while the date was closing in, it was very difficult to, like, get rid of stuff, especially the smaller stuff. We weren't worried about the big things, the cars, the bigger furniture, but the devil is in the smaller things. So that was a very critical thing. I think we should have started sooner.
I can imagine, right? If someone has been living even for like 6 years, 9 years, the a number of things that you would accumulate. Think about like
Yeah.
even just moving from.
Unnecessary.
It just, I think, depends on the size of the house. You just have to fill it in, right? That's how it goes. I can understand. I think people underestimate how much effort it is to even segregate, or what is that we want to donate, what is that we want to sell, what is that we want to take, and it's just a decision process, and we just try to like. It's a very involved, and people underestimate it, and just going through that is very involved process. Yeah.
Correct. And I think the biggest challenges we faced when returning to India is the emotional part. I think it's the fear of unknown. So uh, that is difficult to really measure, or be prepared for. And there's a difference between wanting to move to India and actually deciding to move, and actually moving. There is a lot of emotional turmoil that happens in between, and you meet a lot of people who are against it. You meet a lot of people who are trying to impose their fear on you, because living in America, a lot of people, majority of the people, they want to come back some way or the other sometime, and they most of them, most of the people that we met, they actually they want to come back, and it is this fear of unknown that prevents them, or maybe there are some valid legit reasons why they are not able to come back. That is fair, but a lot of them, they want to come back, and they try to impose this fear on you, that are you sure, are you really sure? Because it's I think we are while we are obviously making our dream come true, in some way we are also making their dream come true, but physically it's not them, it's us.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't want to say jealousy, but it's kind of the feeling of being the fear of missing out, or fear of being left out. That is why they try to kind of make this, they try to create this environment of fear as well. I mean, it's nothing negative about it, it's a human tendency. I mean, if somebody is making a big decision, we tend to make sure that they are thinking this through, so we tend to create this fear of environment.
And it could also be as a good wisher, right? I mean, just because it's a big move, and have you considered A to X, or all these options? So,
Right,
and
right.
you have planned accordingly. Sometimes it's just more from a well-wisher's perspective, but also at the same time, whatever the fears that they have gone through, when they were considering this option, they like try to make sure that you consider this, right? So that additional pointers make you like sometimes question the decision. But I think being strong, and once you made the decision, I think sticking to it, and making that happen, which is congratulations on that. So with that
Yeah.
said, I think you mentioned about this emotional journey, right? Or the unknown factor. So now that you have been living here for almost 6 months, what was your expectation before the move, and what did you learn within the 6 months, so that maybe you can give some light in terms of these concerns that the people might have. What is real concerns, what has been your experience, so at least you can shed some light that could help some people.
It has a broad answer, I think. So luckily, I think for us, first of all, we hadn't expected that we would get settled in so fast. We had lowered our expectations, honestly, and we had said, okay, we're moving in November, maybe until March we won't have a place of our own, and it'll take some time. And but luckily, fortunately, we got our place of our own in January, and we were able to move in January, and everything just fell into place. It was like this was just meant to be, and this move went very smooth. And immediately we started noticing the pros. We had made a spreadsheet back where we listed the pros and cons of India and the pros and cons of US, and we started seeing the pros. The services over here, being closer to your family, being able to meet your family and friends quite frequently. So I think overall it was smooth.
One of the thing is, when we say US, right, it is very point to be noted, is very specific to where in US you are.
Correct.
So people from California, people from Texas, Florida, typically warmer weathers, they will have a different perspective about this move versus we were in a not in the colder states, right? Pennsylvania, probably not as cold as the Northeast, but Pennsylvania is pretty cold. 4 months of the year you are typically enclosed in a house and you can't get out. It's because of the environment. So I think the fact that our daughter can play outside 24/7, literally, is a major motivating factor for us. It's good to see even our parents, they're agile. They can do a lot of stuff here. They can take out a car and they can take our daughter with them, and go, make her move around places to places. So there is a lot of pros that we started noticing. There are cons as well, and we'll probably come back to that, come to that. So I think from in general, from a move perspective, I think it takes a lot of preparation. I think it's when you come to the US, typically for masters, we take a year, right? We almost take a year. We do the GRE and the TOEFL, and then we do the SOPs and letter of recommendation. And then the visa process, it takes around 2 months to get the visa. So, and then we start shopping, meeting around our family, saying goodbyes. So it's the same process coming back. So it definitely takes 6 to 8 months to prepare yourself mentally, physically, because if you don't do that, then it is highly unlikely that you will be you will easily settle in.
Cool. So I think you kind of touched about the time it would take to settle, right? I think is one of the unknown factor, and I think as you mentioned,
we don't still call ourselves settled.
But I think the expectation to what happened, I think you're very happy, like the progress that you have made in terms of that. So any other things that you have considered, from that kind of questioning about your move, or but you decided to make a move, for example, right? I mean, you have like some other factors that could also be considered. Anything that you want to highlight other than the time it would take to settle, in your consideration, for the relocation?
Yeah, I think there is a culture shock. Living in the US for 8.5, 9 years prepares you to be a different kind of person. They change. It changes your personality.
Yes.
It definitely affects your personality. You are independent. You build your own cocoon with your own comfort spots, comfort things, comfort people around you. So changing that again in an environment which is drastically different is very difficult.
I think the other thing I would say is there is a little bit of thought in your mind when you're going back that you would see the same people, you would see the same things, you would have the same experiences as you had before you went to the US.
Like the people in India. Yeah, like yeah, exactly.
That can set you for failure. So I would recommend not doing that, because people in India have moved on. They've got used to you not being around them, and that takes a while for you to grasp and get used to that. So you just have to give it time, and then they'll get used to again you being around them all the time. So
yeah, just the proximity makes a lot of difference in terms of how they pursue and involve and everything. Yeah. So maybe switching gears a little bit. So what are the things that you miss in US, and what are the things that you like in India? Like just like contrasting between living there versus here from your perspective.
So again, I think this is specific to where we lived in the US. We lived in Pennsylvania, where there were a lot of farms. So we went picking every season, whenever the picking started, every fruit that we've picked that grows in in Pennsylvania, probably. So we miss that peace and calm of the countryside, and having fresh ice cream out of a dairy farm, and just the peace and quiet of nature around you. But at the same time, it's a pro and con. Like, we had that, but we were missing not having people around. And now over here, you have people around you. You're meeting someone every weekend, or even every other day for that matter. And then you start missing, like, oh, I think I need that calm again for a little bit.
We just goes in phases, right? I think we need both. It just sometimes you need the people to mingle, hang around, and you need your own my time, just to decompress and think through whatnot.
Yeah.
So we also miss the logistics, the roads, the comfort of traveling, the infrastructure. The comfort of traveling, the free amenities like libraries, parks, museums, all of that. We miss that. And again, higher quality of just the information that you get over there. Yeah, it is difficult to find here. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to find here. And again, you have to travel a lot to so to see something really good in India, you have to travel a lot, and
or pay a lot.
or pay a lot to experience that comfort.
Yeah,
the quiet, the comfort, and all of that. You have to pay a lot or travel a lot. In the US, it's pretty easy to get it.
Got it. I think there is one thing that you mentioned earlier. I think you had a spreadsheet of pros and cons of both countries. I'm guessing that help you to kind of make a rational thought process instead of an emotional connection and doing it. Anything that you want to share with the audience, the process that you approached with and how you went about, the decision process, anything that you want to share with the audience?
So I think, as you said, we kept the emotional part aside, and we really went very rational and objective when we were doing that spreadsheet. We said, okay, what are the things that we really love about the US? And we listed those. Okay, what are the things you are really missing about India? It's not like you don't like about US, but more like, what are you missing about India? And then it started with family and all of that. And then we started saying, okay, roads, for example, roads are not good in India, roads are better in the US. How important are roads in your life? Or in your decision making? And so that's how we went. Like, family, we said, okay, that's very, very important in life right now or forever. So that's going to get a higher weightage. So we really weighed those.
I think the important factors were weather, family, the proximity of friends.
Work culture was a big one.
Work culture,
which was a pro in the US, but not so much in India. But I mean, both of us have just worked for a year in India. So we are not in a state to make a valid comment on that. Maybe it'll turn out good over here. Who knows?
And then the other factor was, the comfort, ease of life.
Yeah.
Because the India we left and the India we are coming back to is very different.
Very good point. People have to think through that. I mean, maybe people might still be thinking India 10 years back and not like what's happening, right? I think people just have to spend enough time in some of these big metropolitans to get the feel of it. I think, which is completely different than what they know about India when they left, for example.
Right. And we asked these questions to a lot of people. We spoke with a lot of people last year. I mean, people who have been, who have been to different countries and they came back to India. People who have been in India and never went outside, by choice. Some people don't want to go outside by choice. People who have been to the US and they have gone to the India, and people who have been in the US and they don't want to go back to India. So there were like all these categories of people we spoke with, and we got their perspective. So that helped us build our pros and cons list as well.
Good.
Because we might be biased. So when we build this list and we want to go back to India, we want to align, we want to give more points to India. Right?
But I think you still went with a rational thought process. It's not like you want to give, but I think in terms of your weightage or the priority.
So there had to be some rational, yes.
But I think it's like this: when you flip a coin and it's in the air, you know what you want, right? So when we were making the spreadsheet, we already knew somewhere what we wanted, which is why it was a little biased.
And I think that is bound to happen. And I think one of the, let's say the trigger or the motivating factor is like, okay, today, what do we think? What do we want to do today? We want to go back to India. So let's do it. I mean, we are not going to get this chance again.
Yeah, not thinking about the future. If
Okay.
in future we won't like it and
People
we would
stay
want
there.
to come back.
People stay there for their green cards, citizenship, whatnot. I mean, typically, I'm just talking about the
Sure.
general crowd.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not being very specific with cases. There are
Yeah.
edge cases, but typically people stay there. Okay, green card ho jayega, tab, it's going to be easy for me to travel back and forth. So I'll stay in the US till that time. Okay, my daughter is just 5 years old, or kids are just 5 years old. Maybe up till 10 years old, it's safe. So there are a lot of milestones that you push out. And we decided not to do that. We said, okay, let's take it on. Let's see, how what our challenges life brings on.
Yeah.
I think both of us had to be on the same page.
Yeah.
It took us time to go there, get there.
For sure. I mean, for such a big decision, if both of the spouses are not on the same page, it is just not going to be a smooth transition, and there will be some challenges, but it's a very important point.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of touched a little bit on the work culture. So I would love to hear, how did you transition from working in US to India in terms of whether finding a job or working for the same company? So how did you approach it? Anything that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, so both of our companies didn't have any operations in India. They didn't have any offices in India, which is why we were assuming the worst. We were like, okay, we are going to resign and then go find a job in India. So we did that. We told our employers that we are moving back, and surprisingly, we resigned actually. And surprisingly, both our employers came back and said, we are willing to support you in India. And even if for a shorter
at
period
that time,
of time,
we were working for different companies.
Yeah. So we said, oh, okay, we did not contemplate this would happen. So let us think about it, and we'll come back. So what we decided is one of us keeps the US employment, and then one of us leaves it and jumps into the Indian job market. That's what we decided to do. So I was still working for my US company when I came here. And then he interviewed for a company while we were in the US. And then he got the job, and we came here, and he could begin his job in a month, I think, after the move.
And a point to be noted here is, I don't come from an IT background. I don't code. I'm not a software engineer. Okay, so I come from a hardcore mechanical. I'm not a mechanical engineer, but it's like automation background, like process automation, industrial automation, robotics, that type of environment, right? So people have this in mind that, okay, I come from, if I'm not a software engineer, it's very difficult for me to get a job back in India. While it might be true, the opportunities might be, inclined towards more software engineering roles. But I think in my case, I got past that fear, and I was lucky enough to find a good employment very close to where I live. And it worked out. So I think there is light at the end of the tunnel for people who are non-software guys.
Okay, that's great. So how did you approach, I think I heard that you applied for these opportunities while in US. So anything that you can share, is that through LinkedIn, or is that through some of the job portals, or is that through some referrals contacts that you have in India? Because I see some of these questions coming up regularly, right? How do we, try to find a job before the move, and not to take a step and then after coming here to try to identify? So anything that you can share?
So I work for a startup. So I directly contacted the owner of the startup, or the founder. And luckily, it's in the same domain that I was working in the US. So it worked out. I gave interviews online, and I got a job.
So I think, so I was working for my US company, but then I left that in a couple of months, and now I'm working for a company in India. So my suggestion would be, look for employers who have offices in US as well as India. That is going to help you a lot to find an opportunity in India. And I would say, don't start too soon, because then people don't really, it's not like they don't believe you, but it's like too far for them to, even start interviewing you. So maybe 2 months or 3 months before your move, start contacting people on LinkedIn or any other platforms you use, and start sharing your story. Tell them that you're willing to coming back, and it would make your move smoother if you already have an opportunity in hand, and people start believing you then.
Cool. Thanks. I think you mentioned your daughter, 2-year-old.
Yeah.
How is she adjusting, enjoying the time with the grandparents? So just how, I mean, because that's one of the other big factor in your decision process, right? That she can play 24/7, literally, in terms of that environment, in terms of the friends, in terms of the family supporting, how has it been so far?
I think
So
she's
I think that, yeah,
least negatively affected person.
the move has been the smoothest for her. She has transitioned so well, and she has her grandparents around, all the others, chachas, chachis, aunties around her that pamper her. So I think
Yeah.
the age is one of the factors, because she's so young. That's the factor. That's because
She
wasn't.
doesn't have a reference line
Yeah.
right now, so she
Yeah.
can't compare. She does. I think she misses. I think she remembers a few things from the US.
Yeah, she
She looks
remembers
at
her
photos.
daycare. She remembers her teacher from the daycare
Daycare.
and her friends. So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, from her end, I think it's more for the parents that they are more worried about, about their kids than for the kids.
Yeah. I'm sure they are so flexible than what we can even imagine. I think they are more adaptable than I think we underestimate that, especially at the young age. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Switching gears a little bit, I think you have been living here for 6 months. Anything that you want to share or comment on the cost of living, the expectation versus the reality? Uh, things have changed in India, right? And anything that you want to point out for the future aspirants that they need to consider during their decision process?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we did speak with the 4 categories of the people. So our recommendation would be is to talk to people who are living in India now and get exact numbers. Ask them what rent do they pay in the city that they are in, what is the typical rent or the housing cost, what are the typical service costs that they have to pay, what are the school fees, conveyance costs that they have to pay. So get those numbers. So just like you do your own budget, it's the same thing. You have to get the baseline cost. You have to, that you pay in India, and then that will give you that. Okay, then that will give you your savings, delta as to, okay, this is how much I have to pay from my pocket for all the services. Cost of living wise, daycare is very cheap
As compared
to the US. Even the ratio is really, again, it really depends. I think most of the answers is it depends, because we have not enrolled her to a fancy daycare, but daycare is pretty simple in nature. It has all the basic facilities that any other daycare has.
Mhm.
But again, I think there are various levels of daycares that you'll find in India. There are, just a regular somebody as a lady working from home, that type of daycare. Then there are centers like daycare centers that have mandates and that they follow certain policies. So similar, that is where she goes. And then there are really fancy daycares that have a curriculum, and that is where a personality development happens, or like really they are expensive and they have other amenities. So it depends on where you enroll your kid.
But India has become expensive. I think that's one thing that we probably didn't consider when we said, okay, the India has changed a lot since we left. That's one factor we did not consider. We were like, okay, chai used to be 10 rupees when we left, and when we came back, on the way we got a cup of chai and it was 25 or 35 or something. We were like, how can chai be 35 or whatever?
Yeah.
You would see that difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, services are cheap in general. Domestic help is cheap, obviously, as compared to the US. I think anything to do with people services, they're cheaper still in India as compared. I'm talking about the ratio.
Yes.
If to income ratio.
Yeah.
So that is cheaper in India. Products are expensive. Products, especially that are coming from outside, are expensive. Clothes we are very, we don't buy branded clothes. Typically, I am not a person who buys branded clothes. I buy, you know, domestic
Local.
clothes, local clothes. So even the t-shirt that I'm wearing, that and that is very cheap. That is really very cheap. So you can get a t-shirt for like 250 rupees, 300 rupees, good quality,
Yeah.
right? So that is cheap. Fruits are expensive.
Yeah.
Typically in the as compared to the US. Again, there is a balance here because fruits over here, you can get different variety of fruits here.
Seasonal.
Seasonal are much more in, much more variety than you get in the US. So the mangoes.
Yeah.
That's pro, by the way.
Mangoes are
Yeah.
very cheap as compared to the US. Yeah, so I think in general, products coming from outside are expensive. Products that are, electronics are expensive. And I think daycare is much more cheaper. Food is very cheap. Services are quite cheap. You can still have a meal in 150 rupees to 200 rupees, which is like $3.
Yeah.
So you can't have a healthy meal there in the US. It's for $3.
Yeah. For sure. Cool. So looking back, is there anything that you could have done differently with the move?
I think I already mentioned this before. We would have loved to start sooner because
Okay.
in the end, it was a big chaos for us. Yeah, if we would have started sooner. I think we didn't start sooner because we weren't ready to tell people that we are moving. And that stopped us from starting sooner. If we were,
And I think there was a combination because we didn't have a job.
Yeah.
So I think at that time we were very afraid of if we tell people, then they'll start asking us questions to where we were not ready to give answers for.
Yeah.
At that time. So yeah, so there was a multiple of things. But again, we could have started selling stuff.
Yeah.
Or donating it. We had to trash a little bit of stuff at the end. But again, that could have been avoided.
Got it.
And yes,
yeah,
and
go
I
ahead.
would say with your car valuation. So we didn't have a house there, we were renting a house. So if you have a house, start the process sooner. Start getting your finances planned. Hire a CA in India, hire a tax consultant in India. So that we already did. So definitely please do that because there are tax rules that you have to be aware of. There are financial, I would say, start mobilizing your money to India. If you have stocks in the US, then I would say consolidate all your accounts. So I had Robinhood, we had Betterment, we had Fidelity, and other accounts. So we started consolidating them into one account. There is a good app called Mint.
Yeah.
That we used. So that consolidates all your account. You can see it's like a one-stop shop. You can see everything over there through that app. So I'm still looking for a similar app in India. So if somebody is into the software domain who wants to do something, I would recommend studying that app and doing something like that for India.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I think mobilizing money, mobilizing finances, talking to your 401k, talking to your insurance providers, that would really help. Get an insurance in India as well.
So you refer there the health insurance.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think we have covered quite a few topics here. Is there anything that we haven't touched that is something that you want to bring up and share that could help with the team?
I think do your research. So there's one thing. Are you moving out of the US because you're not happy with the location that you're staying in is very important. So for us, we've traveled a lot. We traveled almost 26 states out of 50. So we kind of knew, so our reasons were not specific to that. Our reasons to go outside US were not state specific. So even if we lived in California and Florida, then in our pros and cons list, few numbers would have changed, but probably we still had the basic reasons.
So immigration would have been an issue still. Changed, right? The distance between India and US would still have been a factor. So
parents' health. Yeah, proximity to parents would still been a factor. So get those factors down, get those core factors down that are really important for you move irrespective of where you stay. Are you staying in the US just because you are bored of the US? Do you want to come back to India just because you think India is more fun? because when we come to India for traveling is very different than when we come back here for good.
Yes.
So, and then the other thing is, if you really want to come back to India, please come back. Please go visit India
before
before you
making the
make that
decision.
decision.
So that's what we did. We made the decision in March, and previously, before the
January.
March, in January, we had come to India for a visit. And that's where we looked at India from a very different perspective in that trip that we hadn't done in the previous trips.
Mhm.
So we met people who were living in India, friends who were living in India, and we talked to them about the life in India in general. How is the life? And we started looking at things that, okay, how would I feel if I'm living here now? Am I going to like this? What's going around me?
For example, go to a bank, talk to a CA, talk to a tax advisor, and just see how they offer services. Get comfortable with those type of services. Like even today, going to a bank, you have to physically go to a bank to do something, right? So start paying electricity bills for your friends or for your parents, and see how the process goes, and make sure that okay, you have to do this every month now.
Mhm.
Would that work for you? Talk to the domestic help and understand what kind of issues, challenges you will face with that aspect. uh, which locality you have to stay. Now, I am not promoting a book here because I don't know that person this person in a very intimate way, but she is graduated from the same college that I went to for my bachelor's. She is my senior, and she has written a very good book called Back Home. Her name is Nupur Dave. So we recommend that read this book. It's a really good book. It is and emotional an emotional guide for NRIs on the fence about moving to India. It covers a lot of topics, and it did rhyme with us.
And
So,
I think the good thing about her or the book is she's not telling you whether you should stay in the US or not stay in the US, go back or not go back. She's giving you all the possible factors for you to think about them and then make your own decision. So it was a really good book. Like we read it twice before even we made the decision, and we started underlining the things that we really loved about the book.
her writing is very casual, but it did help us.
Okay. Thank you very much for the recommendation. I think, something watching, that helped you with your journey, and especially, providing all the aspects to consider, right, with the move. And at the end of the day, that's your decision, but somehow guiding through the process, would definitely help a lot of people, and really appreciate recommending. I think, the goal here is to help people who are aspiring with the move in terms of their decision process and what could help in making the right decision for them at their journey in the life. So that's always the goal.
True.
Yeah.
Great. So I have like this rapid four just for the fun. So what's the surprise thing that you encountered after returning to India?
Oh, the digitalization. Oh my God. You can just sit home and have everything delivered to you, and you don't have to have cash in your wallet. You don't have to carry your wallet. You can just carry your phone. And even if you have to pay a rupee for, I don't know, if you buy a chocolate or whatever, you don't have to give cash for that. It's all digitalized. I think
That's really good.
yeah, I love that about India.
Yeah,
We
for
felt
sure.
when we first landed in India because we didn't have GPay registered, so that was fun to begin with.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's also about US. You don't really use cash a lot in US. You use cards, but over here it's a completely different game with GPay and UPI. Yeah.
For sure. I think UPI is so much advanced in India than in any other countries, like with the payment system. As you said, no need to take even your wallet, right? Just the phone, and that suffice, like, for doing all the transactions. Like,
Yeah, even your utilities get linked to your UPI, and it reminds you that this is the bill you have and you have to pay it. And
yeah.
yeah, it's really.
So what's your favorite travel destination in India?
So we live in Pune. So in and around Pune, I think we travel a lot to this fort called Sinhagad. She's from Nashik.
Yeah, my favorite destination is Nashik because parents live there. I've grown up over there, and I just love Nashik. Compared to all the metro cities, Pune, Mumbai, Nashik is still a growing city and it has its peace and calm. So if I'm looking for that peace and calm, I just go visit Nashik.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Indian dish?
Amras.
Oh yeah, mangoes.
And this is
Puri.
the season. And yeah.
And the availability of having chai. I keep mentioning chai because I'm a really chai person. So even in the US, when we used to visit, these national parks or whatever, and it used to be cold, and we were like, "Bas ek chai milni chahiye thi." And that happens over here. Like we went to Kashmir and all those snow-clad mountains, snow around us, and we had hot cup of chai in our hand. So that's
And the last one is, what's the best part of living in India? If you have to pick, I mean, your favorite part.
For me, I think it's so I'm a big Indian classical music fan. I think both of us
both
are.
of us.
She's learning Indian classical music as well. So I think the frequency at which we can go to those concerts. So we are at liberty to reject a few concerts. In the US, we are kind of stuck with whatever whatever we had at that time. I think we are both fans of plays,
We
drama, and play.
Marathi plays and dramas.
So we have watched a lot of them in the past 6 months.
I think also the biggest thing is meeting your family so frequently. Because when we were in the US, we used to meet our nieces and nephews after a year, and they have grown up so much in a year. And they kind of stop relating to you, you kind of stop relating to them. But when you're here, you meet them frequently. You know what's going on in their lives, and I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for sharing that. I didn't know that both of you were into classic music and like into the plays, and having that luxury to decide which one you want to choose versus, definitely, I think, that definitely opens up the options that you have because of, the place in India.
Yeah, and then the biggest thing is we can leave our daughter with the grandparents and just go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your experience, your thought process. Really appreciate like how you went with like a rational thinking of, decision making of the move back to India and your journey so far. And I wish you all the best. And thanks again for all your time and spending the time to share your story today.
Thanks, Avinash.
Thank you so much, Avinash.
Thank you all for joining us on this insightful journey of Desi Return. If you enjoyed this episode and want to explore more stories and expert advice, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts and experiences. By the way, check out the links in the description below for our Facebook group and social media for updates and engaging discussions, as well as connecting with fellow Desi Returners. Thank you once again, and until next time, may your Desi Return journey be filled with joy, growth, and endless possibilities.